please welcome Nigel Dalton.
Thank you. Okay, well, A, we need to make that technology work. That's always a good thing. And B, I know I'm standing between a group of Sydney-siders and their guinea pig frappuccinos that they all wanted at 10:30, and they're getting a bit stressed by it. So let's go fast. We can ask questions later, okay? So I am fascinated by the world and the change that we're within, and I'm going to attempt to explain that in a grand unifying theorem today. So if I can get the thing to work, that would be awesome. Press it again. Oh, that's a very long way through the story. And it's even further. I wish I did have telepathy at the moment. Okay, so let's do it. It's a fool who attempts predictions in a world, and I am that fool. Prediction number 1, 2035, which, you know, it's coming. We are not living on Mars, and Elon Musk will not be taking us there. Uber will be bankrupt by that point in time, because I hope out of all the hype that you hear today, you do go back to one simple thing. The brilliant ideas you make do actually have to make a profit along the way, because venture capitals will run out of patience. So, but I am, that said, the guy who was caught on Current Affairs saying that telepathy would be a fantastic interface for computers in the future and would definitely happen, as much as my PR advisor was trying to say, could you just say it was a possibility rather than a reality accordingly? No, I couldn't. And yes, you do know me for some of this kind of stuff at REA Group and REA Labs. We had brilliant investment and things, and as Scotty reminded me this morning, the difference between being wrong and being early is nothing. So yeah, 3D captures of properties and turning into virtual reality portals. It was a lot of fun, not commercial at all, as it turned out in the case, but I'll rely on this generation to use and make that technology real and work for people accordingly. Pressed too hard that time. There we go. So this is an anchor point, 2035. Oh, it's miles away. Geez, I'll be in my 70s by then. It's forever away. You won't be. You'll look very much younger. But I think this is the anchor. You've got to remember that 2035 is the same distance away from us now as 2010 is. Same way that 2050 is the same distance as from 1990. You know, and everyone remembers 1990. Well, certainly in this room, everyone remembers 2010 because you didn't have an Apple iPhone at that point. You were still using a Trio, or you were whatever cool thing you had a device. You didn't catch an Uber. You didn't use social media in the Uber because it wasn't on mobile anyway. 4G, what was that? A dream in the future. So much has happened in this time, and it's about to keep happening. There's no reason to think that'll stop. So if we're brilliant and geniuses and things that we knew, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Well, think about that now. You know, that punk kid there was a punk kid. Now he's the, you know, the future president of the United States. And, you know, look at the havoc that has been wrought in the meantime. So I want to talk, I mean, I am a social scientist. I get the privilege of doing that at Thoughtworks. And I like big words. And my big word for today is liminality. What liminality is important for this because we all are desperate as humans to either be in the before or the after state. Now, liminality is a social science word. It comes from a French anthropologist who was talking about rites of passage for kids and children and rituals and all those kind of things. And imagine, so you're a 12-year-old, you're a tween, and then suddenly the after state is you're a teenager. There's a moment on your birthday that if time stopped, you're neither. You're liminal. And we are in liminal times. This is not the after of Proptech. It's not the before either. We've got a lot of shit, okay? It's a lot of tech and a lot of opportunity, but we ain't there yet. But by 2035, we're probably going to be heading towards it. Living in liminal times is ambiguous, and you're in that ritual, you know, you're halfway between being a child and being an adult. You are in another liminal sense, as I've discovered today. This is the most liminal place in the world. Liminal has a temporal and a spatial dimension. Think of how you behave on an airplane. It's like you're sitting in the lounge beforehand, it's all good. That's the before world. The after world, oh, we got here and we jumped on the train and we came into town. How do you psychologically behave in liminal times? Like this. Bitch not wearing a mask. Like, what's going on this plane? I'm going to die. And you just get me, like, and some people, they want to get there, and some people are just going, oh, I wish I'd never left the lounge. That's we're in. We are in the plane of technological change. Now, here's another great metaphor for it. I wish I invented these things. I'm not that clever. A lady called Sonia Blinyo, a writer about change and change at large scale. She has this great metaphor to say, you know what? Life and business in the last 10 years has basically been conducted in a zoo. Now, Pete lives in a zoo. I live in a zoo of a world called Queensland. Now, the difference is, in a zoo, you can navigate it. It's hard work. The concrete paths, the signs, the animals are in their cages. The crocodiles aren't going over to the kangaroo's cage because they're locked in or they'd eat them. You get around, and the biggest disappointment, the biggest unknown is whether the cafe is still open by the time you pushed the strollers around and got to the other end. So you've all been navigating the Proptech zoo in the last few years. Like the big enclosure down the end was realestate.com.au. You know, I had the pleasure of working, but there's other enclosures all over the place. We snarl a bit at 3 o'clock and we know when we get fed. Good metaphor for life in business in the last 10 years. Now, the trick is pressing the button. Oh, gone too far. There we go, one more. Let's use that zoo metaphor to figure out what it is you've actually been doing. And these are two brilliant people, Marshall McLuhan and Nicholas Negroponte, talked about transformation in media, but it goes for any industry. So when newspapers started to transform into where we are today, they followed a particular path. So I don't know if you remember reading the newspaper on a computer in 1999. It looked largely like a piece of newsprint with the columns. It was just a PDF, essentially, of that thing on the screen. And that was the first stage of digitization of a whole industry. We got clever and somebody invented a content management system and we broke it up into stories and we could publish those, and then it was reassembled. Oh, HTML, we're fantastic, we can code this, and put it back together in that phrase. This is just mechanizing the old world that we had. And PropTech, to be honest, is really just mechanizing the old world that we had. And what is the opportunity? Well, the opportunity is to go here. And who's been on safari? Who's had that luck here? Like, okay, very, very different terms and conditions to a trip to the zoo. No guarantee you're going to see any animals. They're not being fed at 3 o'clock. The ice cream shops, there isn't one. There's no navigation. You need to be your wits about you. You need to understand that nothing might happen at all. And in that picture, I mean, that's a classic picture of going on safari. There are animals in it, but I can't see them. They're not in their cages. There's no signposts. There's no little window to take a beautiful selfie against. And this is business in the next 10 years. This is through to 2035. We are now in the jungle. There are no cages. They're collaborating with each other, these animals, in ways that we never expected. You know, the hyenas are rounding up lame game for the lions to eat, and they get the bones afterwards. That's the fintechs lining up with the property portals, lining up with, like, shit, that shouldn't happen. Get back in your cage. There are no cages in the jungle. So what you need to do, in McLuhan's metaphor, is move to the next way of working, which is rewiring a jungle. So the clever bit, some people have got to this point, taking those stories in a newspaper and atomizing them right down into the words and the pixels in the images and starting to reassemble them into new formats. So I get it on my watch now, right? That's pretty cool. And some are then applying algorithms and intelligence and scale and changing the way the product and value are delivered to consumers. And that's what the PropTech industry has to do. Stop automating the zoo. Now, this is one of the reasons why you want to stop automating the zoo and being so proud about making a paper process into a digital process, is because out in the jungle, hidden, are these damn things. And they're enormous. That's Google. That's Facebook. That's Amazon. And they're out there rustling, that little rustling sound, looking at what you've got, quite happy to attack your Land Rover. Quite happy. Don't give a shit, basically. You're in their jungle. They're bigger than you. And we always thought about this at REA Group going, you know what? Who is going to be those people who own the house next door? Who are going to put on Amazon Prime to my 21-year-old his rent and actually answer the phone when he rings up to say, there is no water in my house anymore. It's falling down. Well, I'll tell you what, he probably trusts Prime a great deal more than he trusts a wet Footscray landlord. So that's the elephant. The other ones, you're all these ones, you're the monkeys. Like you're attacking it's the chaos. That's the feeling you have inside you. It's that primary, oh my God, there's going to be a monkey just run out and steal my iPhone. It's a stressful business as a result. But that is what happens in jungles. And the thing with jungles, and particularly when the jungles have been mined in, tragic war circumstances, who is the safest person in a minefield in the jungle? The person who doesn't move, who just stays locked to one spot. So you wonder about how hard it is to persuade your customers to move or adopt or do anything new. It's because they see themselves in this crazy, emotional, threatening business environment, and this is only going to get worse to 2035. And their logical solution as to what to do is not make a decision and not move 1 inch. So you have to put a whole ton of thinking into how to motivate them to keep moving accordingly. Now, my reference guide for how you do that is read this book, Demand Side Sales. A friend of mine from the world of lean in America rang me to say, you've got to read this book. And I'm going, I don't read sales books. I worked at realestate.com.au for 8 years. I'm exhausted by everything I've had to learn about selling as a nerd. He's going, this is not a sales book, this is a lean book. And this is the guy, Bob Moesta, who invented the concept of jobs to be done, which Clayton Christensen sold in his book. He invented it and gave it to Christensen. And what he does, one of his stories is so pertinent to this industry. He bought into Lombardo properties in the Midwest and took them from being pretty successful to being unbelievably successful by actually honing in on the small data of what was the struggle of the people buying those homes, which was not related to the bench tops, which they were giving away for free. It was not related to choosing one from the immense brochures. It was actually related to moving. Now, I know this to be sure. Like I've got a lovely house being built back in New Zealand. What my biggest nightmare and the thing that will delay us going is the prospect of having to move. So they built in movers to their property price, and between that and one or two other very clever alterations to the architectures of the homes, increased their sales 80%. Recommend the book. Now, here's some factoids from 2035. Number one, our cities are most certainly going to be shaped differently to how they are today. Now, you can get Starlink today. I don't know if you've seen Elon Musk's fabulous thing go across the sky at any point in time. $139 a month. It's about, that's all right. $139 a month gets you 100 maybe to 300 megabits, unlimited traffic, whatever you want to do. So we don't need to live in vast suburbs on the edge of Melbourne anymore. So the shape is going to be changed by that technology. Climate change, which someone much more expert than me is going to talk about, by 2035 is a serious everyday reality. The house I'm building in New Zealand is 36 metres above sea level for a very simple reason. I want it to be there 200 years. And if we're not careful in that 200 years, between the effects of a tsunami and the effects of sea level rising, won't be there. And look at how tough New South Wales and Queensland have had it in this last year. That's not going to go away. The housing class divide is also real. I would love the property tech industry to lean into this. Just the irony of this poster, like buy a home with no down payment with a homeless person living underneath it. This is going to be a big deal because you have a generation coming through who really vitally care about social justice, and you have a generation of boomers like me who will walk all over the poor and the unhoused to get more than my fair share. And we have to solve this, and it has to be rationalised, and there's people doing good work. Now, the real horror is this one. I do a little bit of work with a great charity called Orange Sky Laundry, which I know a bunch of you do as well. But look at these stats. Do you know what the plague in Australia is going to be? Is homelessness among people who should not ever have had to worry about homelessness. Like the number of women over 50 sleeping in cars in Australia today is utterly appalling. They have jobs, but the structure of the world that we created that locked them out of their superannuation for long periods of time and relationship, it just takes two things going wrong and you're sleeping in a car. Now, the really interesting thing is that the plague here is not homelessness, it's the social and societal impacts of it, the mental health impacts of one gigantic problem. And I know, because I met two young fellows this morning on the train who are working on this, the plague of loneliness in communities. And loneliness is the number one health risk on the plan of Flinders, the Flinders Hospital Group in Adelaide, which has the most aged community in the country. Have a think about that for opportunities. Because we're aging really rapidly. Liz Allen's book about this, by 2055, if we have the current rate of immigration continuing, which half the country doesn't seem to be supporting, one 5-year age cohort is the number one cohort in this country. And it's women aged 80 to 84, because the blokes have all died early. And you go, wow, that's going to be really interesting. They're going to have a voice. And they're going to impact politics, and they're going to impact policy. And it's just not the pyramid you thought you were living in before. Now, it's a tax problem as well as how exactly they're going to fund caring for those people who are all going to live into their 90s. Interesting problem to have. But it doesn't mean you have to make shitty old people products and services, right? It doesn't have to be a really shit app with really big type on it. No. Maybe you can talk about talking to it. You know, we've all got the experience of dealing with an octogenarian at some point in our lives, haven't we? Dad, can you just put the phone up a bit? I want to see more than your forehead. Coroma are all over it. I saw this stuff recently. I think it was at Reese. I'm going, oh, that's pretty cool. Future-proofing the home. And you go, that actually is designer disability or age disability, the limitations you get from control of muscles, and it's cool. Why can things for old people not be cool? Is there a rule around that? So I think that's a huge opportunity, and anyone in the field of data, my sense, who are happy to say Thoughtworks had a big hand in helping build the original app, but using data to support people longer in the home. Really clever network of sensors. You only need 5 sensors in an old person's home, and you know everything about them. The bed, the front door, the television, the lounge, and the toilet flush. You know all there is to know about a human being who's needing care or support in some kind. Now, 2035, what else is going to be significant that you should be thinking about on your radar and your strategy? Number one is the new landlords and the new builders. So, sensation in New Zealand at the moment, oh my God, somebody's importing homes from Japan. And this builder's getting a lot of heat for importing Panasonic homes. Like, how could that be? What are they? Like video recorders built in? No, get your head out of your local market. By 2035, Panasonic, with the most phenomenal pre-built, 6-star, energy-efficient, age-friendly homes that you can drop onto a site and assemble in a matter of 2-3 weeks, they're going to be a major, major thorn in the side of a massive industry, which can't be put up on the scale of our industry. Do you think they don't notice that shit? They're looking at it going, where are all the white people with the money who are getting old, who need good houses? They're in Australia. And if it isn't Panasonic, it's Toyota. Toyota have a housing factory the size of the central business district of Sydney. And do you think they make shit houses? Again, 6-star, environmental, made to order. They're not boxy micro homes and trailer homes. These are proper houses that are assemblable in Japanese scale. I mean, and you want a big one, you add more parts. This, by 2035, will be our global competitive position. So we can't afford to be just a bit lackadaisical and worship the Aussie tradie and his Ford Ranger and all that crap, because Tell you what, unless they can assemble flat pack houses, they don't have the Ford Ranger in 2035. And Amazon have been there forever. I apologise to those who know me. I've had this slide on my deck for 6 years. Amazon houses designed in Finland, built in Estonia, shipped them around world. For then it was 105,000 US dollars. And it's not a tiny home. It's a proper home. And I love it. They're thinking and reassembling an industry in ways that are really, really valuable. So my best advice is talk to each other, be part of this community, listen to customers, read Bob Moesta's book, and just remember all the things you've experienced since 2010, you're going to experience that and more to 2035, when hopefully, typical lifespan of an Australian startup, Kylie, 11 years, Google will come along and buy you for heaps of money. Thanks very much.